We are about to embark on an immersive journey through the corridors of our minds. Stand by as we prepare for departure.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to the Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast adventure. Our journey will begin in just a moment. Inhale deeply and exhale. Our voyage takes us on a captivating tour, diving deep into the intricate layers of our thoughts and imagination. Brace yourselves for the complexities of our evolution. For a safe and enjoyable journey, stay seated. Secure your helmet and protective goggles, and keep hands, feet, and legs inside while the ride is moving. Now relax and enjoy.
What if I told you the way you're tackling your to-do list could actually be counterproductive to your productivity? Get your pen and paper out for this episode because we are meeting with a couple of productivity experts who are going to be helping us uncover this and learn exactly how to turn it around to conquer our list. Allegra Ramos and Natascha Corrigan are entrepreneurs, moms with 4 businesses and 3 kids between the two of them. They have an expertise in productivity, habit formation, and teaching accessible, science-backed workshops, which I absolutely adore. Welcome, you two. It's so great to have you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And can you come everywhere and introduce us at all things? Because I love how you said
Seriously.
that.
I got chilled. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I'm happy to do so. Let's do it. So I want to start out looking at when we uncover our productivity and really look at what's happening underneath. Why is mindset so important? Because that's something that's really important to me. And when we look at productivity with peace of mind, the mind piece is so important. So let's dig into why that is and what your perspective is on that.
Well, I think that mindset is important when you want to be efficient in any part of your life. Natasha and I often talk about living by design rather than by
Yeah.
default. And
Yeah.
especially Natasha and I are both working moms, especially as you take on more responsibilities in life, there are urgent things that come at you constantly. However, urgent does not mean important. And so
Yeah.
having a strategic mindset is what allows you to filter out the not the urgent but not important things to make sure that you're actually focusing on what you want to be focusing on.
Right. And before Allegra and I started working together, I was really good at planning in certain areas of my life, but what, like Allegra just said, those urgent things always would take over. So I felt really busy. I felt like I was doing a lot because I was doing a lot, but I wasn't really moving forward in the areas that were really important. So even though I was busy and I was getting a lot checked off, let's say, at the end of the day, when you're falling asleep at night and you're thinking about maybe a longer picture, a bigger trajectory, those things would just seem to be really slippery. I wouldn't be able to really get purchase on that until I really started thinking about the mindset you're talking about, which is just by planning a little bit, just by being a little strategic and getting really clear on values and where you would what you would prioritize over things that just pop up, and how that can really make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And you guys talk about the 3 mistakes that we might be making when it comes to our to-do lists, our productivity, and getting things done. So do you want to introduce us to the first one?
Yeah, absolutely. I even just kind of touched on it a little bit there where I said I'm like really, really, really busy, right? And
Yeah.
one of the first mistakes people do when tackling a to-do list and is basically just going ahead and putting down everything. Absolutely everything. And so this means not just the stuff you're going to do, but maybe the stuff you've already done, or maybe even the stuff that you always do, right? So there's no need to, yeah, there's no need to put down brush your teeth, because chances are, hopefully, you're already brushing your teeth twice a day, but I absolutely fell into that trap because there's a part of that was attractive, like the busyness quotient of like, well, if I'm busy, then I'm productive. And that's not always the case, right? And so you get to feel like you're busy when you put down everything. Now, we also do talk about, and Allegra's going to talk in a moment about what to do in lieu of this mistake that we all make, or most of us make, in putting down everything. But the thing that I wanted to say is that by going ahead and putting down all of these things and feeling really, really busy, often what was falling through the cracks are the things that are important, because you do get a dopamine hit going like, brush my teeth. Oh, I did that. Check, and so next thing you know, you're just checking, because you're doing all these things, but maybe you're really not going ahead, and maybe you're doing those things to avoid, the maybe less pleasant tasks, or those ones that feel a little more daunting. But you're feeling really, really great about what you've done all day because you've done a lot. And we are proponents of a mind dump, right? Which we'll talk, going ahead and getting it out of your head and onto paper. But Allegra's going to talk about being more strategic around that.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of productivity coaches do talk about, the importance of the brain dump, which 100% get it onto paper, but then don't just leave it there. This is where we introduce our 3-step framework to help you be strategic about it. And, there's a lot of, Natasha and I are big brain science nerds. Everything we do is brain science backed. It's really interesting, the fact that like some people are like, well, I don't need to write it down. I have it all in my head. But the thing is science shows that when you take it out of your head and put it onto paper, you actually free up brain power to do higher and more creative thinking, rather than just like keeping track of the things, like little open tabs going off in your head. So it's absolutely worth the time. And by the way, everything we're talking about is in our book and our video workshop, 3, 2, 1 done, 3 simple strategies to get your to-do list done. So, if you want to read it there, feel free, but we're walking through the whole process here. But, we know some people like to read, so we just put it out there. So tip number 1 is not write everything down, because while in some way it's a great brain dump, in other ways, as Natasha mentioned, you can counterproductively trigger dopamine. And then you get flooded with dopamine and you feel like you don't actually have to do anything. So the two things, it's really funny.
Yeah.
It's like you only need so much to feel good. And then you're like, well, I don't need any more. I mean, you don't think you don't need any more.
You don't
but
think that. You just feel accomplished.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you know what? Let's go get ice cream, because I was just reward myself for how productive I've been today.
Because I brushed my teeth. So I need to go have ice cream now.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So good.
So first of all, we would say in that brain dump, do not write down things that you're already doing or have already done. How many people do that, right? They write down something they just did just so they can cross it out. And by the way, I'm completely guilty of this as well. We've all done it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you can do better. That's the beauty of having a growth mindset, right? Is you can always do better. So don't write down things that are naturally reoccurring or that you've already done just for fun to write it down. And so things like walking the dog and brushing your teeth, those are great things to do, but they have better reminders that you can create, such as if you associate a recurring activity with a time or a location, it's going to become a habit, in which case you're going to use no brain power making it happen, because that's the beauty of habits, right? Your brain uses so much energy. It's constantly looking for ways to save calories, because we are feast and famine animals. It's funny because people don't think of thoughts as things that burn calories, that take up calories, but no. Your brain, it's like, I used to know the statistic off the top of my head. My brain has decided it's not important, but it's something like it's like 2% of your body weight, but it actually uses like 20% of your calories. Okay. So all those random thoughts you're having, people, that's wasting energy, literal energy. So the better way to do reoccurring things is to associate it with a time or a place so that it happens automatically. So when you walk into the bathroom first thing in the morning, brush your teeth, or right after dinner, brush your teeth. You know, walking the dog, again, first thing in the morning, put on your tennis shoes, walk the dog, or last thing at night before you go to bed, walk the dog. That's going to ensure it happens, and it's not going to clutter up your mental space.
Yeah.
Mm.
My dog just reminds me. He's like, boom,
Right.
boom,
Right.
come on, so I don't have to write that down.
Yeah. Or they're
He
going to
just
pee
comes
on the
over and
floor and remind
he's
you.
just going to nudge you until
Yeah.
you take him out, right? So it doesn't have to take up space here. It doesn't have to take up space on your to-do list too, which also can like lead to feelings of overwhelm too, right? If you list everything you had to
Okay.
do on a piece of paper, like on your to-do list, my God, that's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So there's that factor as well.
Well, and for people watching the video, right? So here's the mock-up to-do list, and you can see the pink things and the crossed out things. That's half the to-do list. Imagine if your to-do list was half as long as it is now. You're just going to naturally feel, one, more relaxed about it, and maybe more energized to actually do the things on it when, there's only 5 things instead of 10. Okay, so the other thing we don't want you to write down is anything that takes 2 minutes or less to do. This is commonly known as the 2-minute rule in productivity circles. And the fact is that you can spend more time writing it down, and not just writing it down, but if you're one of those people who moves things from to-do list to to-do list to to-do list, like that thing might live on your to-do list for weeks, but it took 2 minutes to actually do.
Or
So
less,
on
or less. I want to
or
point out, or
less.
less.
Yes. Like for
Yeah.
instance, if it pops up in my head like, oh, I haven't had my hair cut in a while, I will immediately text my stylist and be like, when do you have an opening?
Yep.
If my kiddo says, hey mom, I've run out of erasers for the mechanical pencils, I just immediately get on my app and order more erasers. Just get it done, get it off your, mental plate.
Right. Again,
Yes.
that'll take less energy, mental energy. And one thing I do want to mention, because the 2-minute rule, when when Allegra and I first started working together and choose, we talk about the 2-minute rule, and that gives me a little bit of like, what if I don't have 2 minutes right then? Like I would have a little bit of a resistance to that idea of like, just
Yeah.
do it, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, but I want to write it down and do it later or whatever when it's more efficient, or which, by the way, it's there's no point where it's going to be more efficient per se if you've got the 2 minutes. The caveat here
Yeah.
is I'm often with clients where you're in a session with them, and all of a sudden something they say or something comes up and it's like, oh, I have to order those mechanical pencils, or oh, I have to. Yes, then it's okay to write it down, right? So you're not going to interrupt a session with a client to go, pardon me, I'm going to order mechanical pencils. So in that case, yes, of course you can go ahead and write that down. Maybe you just have a 2-minute list, right? That doesn't maybe clutter up your master to-do list. Let's say maybe you just have like, maybe on a post-it you just jot down a couple of those things, and maybe just keep it off that master to-do list to begin with. But in those cases, I want to say it's okay to write down those 2-minute items, and implement that 2-minute rule as soon as your sessions are over.
Well, and in our workshop, we also talk about different ways you can structure, using our framework, different ways you can structure your to-do list. If you are the sort of person who wants to batch 2-minute things into a specific time period, right? So,
right. Yeah, that too.
So
I do want to mention, because Allegra did bring up about taking an item and moving it from to-do list to to-do list to to-do list, that we've also talk about a like 3-time transfer rule, which is once you've gone ahead and transferred that item 3 times, by the time it's on that 3rd to-do list, that's it, y'all. Either you're doing it or you don't get to transfer it anymore, because it really does give you that. If you can just transfer it over and over and over again, that thing will just never get done. So you have to kind of give yourself your own boundary. No one's going to hold you to it except yourself. So that boundary of, you get to transfer it once, twice, and once it's on that 3rd to-do list, you're either doing it or you're not allowed to transfer it again. So it's one of those things, either you're just never going to do it, or you just, if it's important, I guess you'll do it then. Hopefully. Just wanted to, that's a little sidebar, a little asterisk.
Yeah, so much of what we teach is about learning what works for you and how you're motivated. We're all motivated differently. And Natascha and I always give people different options for how they can do things, because what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you, or maybe it doesn't necessarily work for you at this point in your life, but at some point, like, we want to teach people the framework, so at some point they think, oh, that thing Allegra and Natascha taught, I could use that here now in this part of my life. So, it's all just about being aware of how you're motivated and what works best for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're bringing it into ownership, right? Like you're really owning it for yourself. And then there's urgency. So it's not just cluttering up our minds and taking up all that space so that we can't think clearly and creatively. And by the way, I love that you bring the science into it because I have to tell you, I have heard it so many times where people will tell me exactly what you said. Like, oh, yeah, I can just remember it. And I'm like, do you know how much time and energy that takes to just, it's like a horse running circles in your brain. Like, I don't want that. Do you want that? Like,
No.
nobody wants that.
Well, and I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a big believer that most of us leave out like one crucial piece of information that would make something so
Yep.
much more clear to the person they're talking
Yep.
to, especially the parent too, right? Like I was raised with why do I have to do that, mom? Because I told you so. And that like made me so mad as a curious child. And so with my
Yeah.
child, when she asks me why, I say, you need to do that because I'm trying to teach you the habit of getting up early and starting with movement first thing in the day, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And Natasha and I are the moms who will like look up the brain science video on YouTube and then play it for our kid and be like, here's the brain
Yeah,
science behind
because
it.
my older kid doesn't accept my answer on the face of it. It has to be backed up by YouTube experts.
That
And
is so
hopefully YouTube,
funny.
like a doctor or somebody, but I got to come with receipts for that kid. So, yeah, like he doesn't just accept it on the face.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like teaching our kids
No.
to be
No, no, definitely not.
y-
It is annoying as a parent, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
yeah.
Because I said so thing does not fly with my oldest child.
Yeah. And so we really try to give that to our students as well. Like, hey, think about the fact that your brain is actively chowing down on all those calories and the
Yeah.
fact that that makes you tired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
use your resources for things that really matter, right?
Hmm.
And by the way, Allegra, you are correct. 2% of your body weight is your brain, right?
I
And it
was
uses
right.
20. You were right, 20% of. I quickly looked it up while you were talking.
I love
Yeah,
that.
20% of your energy. So that's crazy, right? It takes up 2% of your body mass and it takes up 20% of your energy. So that, your brain is working hard.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, if you think about any time you've been on a retreat, like think of like a 3-day
Oh yeah.
immersive retreat where you're just taking in
Hmm.
information or school or finals. Like the reason we're so like exhausted and tired after that is because our brain has been working full
Yes.
speed
Hmm.
and that's just what it takes. So understanding that if we're doing that in our lives where we don't need to be, there's real tangible tactical ways to avoid that.
Hmm.
Yep.
100%. Yeah.
All right. So, do you want to jump into mistake number 2?
Good. Yeah. And I love talking about all of these mistakes because these are all mistakes that I had been using or
I
implementing
did too. I did too.
for
Natasha just
sure.
didn't know me then.
Yeah. I mean, like, and so and then this next one is, I'd say I wasn't as guilty of this one as that first one, putting everything down, which is
Yeah.
the second mistake that everybody, or a lot of
But you
people, I should
know
say,
someone who does this.
I do. I do. He's gotten better. Is just randomly tackling your to-do list as you've written it down, right? So when you do a brain dump, you're not
Mm,
maybe
yeah.
necessarily organizing your thoughts in like the most efficient manner or a way in which makes the most sense for you to go ahead and do those things. And so you may just go and write out a to-do list, and the second biggest mistake is just tackling the to-do list in that haphazard order that it came out of your brain. I do know
Yeah.
somebody who does this, and I don't want to throw him completely under the bus, but when I do at times write a honey-do list, we'll talk some other time about how the mental load of that is a whole nother story, but uh, he will often do it in the order that I wrote it down, even though the order that I wrote it down is definitely, doesn't make sense. So that's actually, it's more common of a mistake than you would think, is going
Yeah.
ahead and just randomly tackling those to-dos in the order that you wrote them down.
Yeah.
And so our tip for overcoming that is to first of all evaluate whether or not a to-do is deep or shallow work. And this is an idea that was first raised by Professor Cal Newport, and he defines it in a slightly different way than we do. So, our definition of deep work is tasks that are mentally intense, require focused attention, or have critical deadlines. And our definition of shallow work is tasks that don't require you to be focused, tasks that aren't time sensitive, and tasks that you consider relaxing. And there's no definition of deep or shallow that is absolute. This is absolutely a person by person definition. Like,
Mhm.
I'm one of those satisficing DIYers. Like, I'm like, the paint's on the wall. That's all that matters. And my husband is like, did you got to tape it off first, and then you need to wash the walls with TSP, and then and I was like, oh my God, that's not get done. So I consider painting the walls shallow work. He considers it deep work. Now,
Mm.
we do want to give one caveat, which is that people might consider brainstorming to be something that's deep, but brain science has shown that we actually make more creative associations when we're a little bit tired because our brain is more relaxed. And so you make these like fuzzy connections. So while you might want to try and force creativity by thinking of it as deep work, you might actually be best served thinking of it as shallow work, because being unfocused is actually a little helpful when it comes to things like brainstorming. Now, to help you determine deep and shallow and how you can think about your day in terms of when to schedule deep and shallow tasks, there's a great quiz that you can get at thepowerofwhenquiz.com, and it will help you figure out it's called a chronotype. And this is a don't remember who came up with the idea of chronotypes. This is actually an old idea. And basically there are 4 chronotypes, and based on your chronotype, it will give you recommendations in terms of when you can do deep focus versus shallow focus
Mhm.
work. And so I'm a lion. Even before I did the chronotype quiz, I knew that doing anything that was really like focused attention, I did it way better in the morning. I can write 3 times more words in the morning than I can write at night. And also just like anything focused, like where I had to really pay attention to the answers, it had to be absolutely pristine. I just had better attention for that in the morning. So I scheduled deep work in the morning. Depending on your chronotype, morning might not be the time that you're most alert. So
Mhm.
figure out if things are deep or shallow, and then also figure out your chronotype to give you guidance in terms of picking the time to do things.
Yeah, you might already have an inkling, "Oh, I'm a night owl," or, "Yeah, I'm an early bird." So you might already have that, but going ahead and going to this website, thepowerofwhenquiz.com, gives you a much more, detailed understanding of probably when you're most efficient and most able to work and so forth. Um, when it comes so, like, this tip that Allegra just gave, which is, of course, don't tackle your to-do list randomly, be more focused about it, be more specific about it. Um, when she mentioned also that the biggest hints for things are a lot of times location based. So obviously sometimes some of your to-do list will be location based, right? If you're at the office, you
Mhm.
certain things you can't do at home and vice versa. Um, but this is a really good indicator of understanding what I mean, the example I like to give is that I used to think, oh, I have a ton of time after my kids go to sleep. That's when I'll write my monthly report. That's when I'm going to go ahead and sit down and bang out this. Doesn't take too long, but it does take a lot of focus, right? And I
Mhm.
can't tell you how many times I would put my kids to bed, I'd sit down in front of my laptop and I would just be, nodding off or just not being able to focus enough to like get it done. And it would take me 3 nights to get it done. So it's
Mm.
definitely when you have the time isn't always the best time to schedule something, right? When you have the time, right? It'd be much better for me to carve out 30 minutes in the morning and do it then as opposed to when I had the time after the kids go to sleep. So that's the kind of thing that really, if you're having if you're having trouble kind of like understanding why deep and shallow is important or where you might have to like fit that in your world, just think about the fact that when you have the time isn't always the best time.
That's so relatable. And I think the piece about taking the time to understand yourselves a little bit better, it helps remove the shame, I think, because then it's not like, oh, I have to, like, maybe you're somebody who's been around a lot of morning people and you're like, oh, I have to just get up early and do all these things, but you're not, right? And you can let go of that idea of, oh, I'm supposed to be this way, understand who you are, and take action from a more aligned and intentional space. So I love that. That's super good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
and
falls under the umbrella of the mindset that you were talking about, why mindset is important, right? And I love that
Yeah.
you're pointing out that it removes the shame 100%, because there is definitely a
Yeah.
structure in the modern day world that benefits or rewards certain types of behaviors.
Yeah.
You know, staying, coming in early, staying late, that kind of thing, and a myriad of other things that are purported as good habits and a better way to be. And not all of us fit into those molds. So yeah, it's important to just to know where your strengths lie and use them.
And also, like, we always like to tell our students, when something might carry over into like other parts of their life they might not think of. If you're a manager, chronotype, you might want to consider chronotypes when scheduling your meeting, because the vast
Mhm.
majority of people will be more awake actually around like 10 a.m., 11 a.m. The majority of the population falls into the chronotypes that are alert at that time period. So,
Yeah.
maybe that 8 a.m. meeting or that 4 p.m. meeting are not serving you well because people are not ready to be attentive.
Yeah, we've all sat in on that meeting at the end of the day where everybody is nodding off, no one's
Yeah.
engaging, no one's responding. It's just
Right.
like,
Could
Right.
this could have been an email.
Right.
Right.
Why even have it? Like, if you're going to call people
yeah,
together, make sure they're attentive.
we're wasting labor here.
Absolutely. And I also love the science, what anthropologists posit is that, when we lived in villages, someone had to be awake at all times of the day. So that's why we're distributed like this, so that there are people who naturally want to be awake in the middle of the night. I'm sorry for you people, but you do exist.
They don't care. They're happy. You know, they're happy
Right?
to do it.
Yeah.
Hopefully they
Yeah.
have night jobs.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, truly. I tried night shift when I was about 15 years old. I worked as a nursing assistant working overnights, and it was the funniest thing because, like, I was so exhausted and it drained me. I could not do it for very long, but I would go in there. And I think a lot of people in those positions were not night people because I'd be like, hi, how's it going? How's everybody doing? And they're just like, go away. Like
Yeah.
they could benefit from knowing their chronotype.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, only put dolphins into night shifts. It just makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
That's sorry,
Yes.
that's a chronotype for people
Yeah.
listening. A
Take the
dolphin is
quiz. Find out what are
yeah,
you a
yeah.
lion, a dolphin?
I'm going to
Hmm.
be taking it
Take the
after
quiz.
this. So,
Yeah. At any
absolutely.
part, any modicum of self knowledge, we really, and we're huge proponents of find out more about yourself. You know, what more
Yes.
information is better, and being able to design things for yourself that way, so that it helps you work smarter, not harder.
Absolutely. All right. So, mistake number 3.
Yes. So mistake number 3. This is definitely something that I had trouble with and still continue to sometimes have trouble with when I don't implement it. The effects of this definitely come around and bite me. Um, which is not making time for my to-dos. Now that again, that sounds weird, right? Because I just said a moment ago, like, oh, I'll do X, Y, or Z when I have the time. And that actually is a
Mhm.
good example. Like, what do you mean not making time for your to-dos? It's on the to-do list, but I have not made time for it. It's on there, but I haven't gone ahead and figured out when I could actually do it. So of course, using your chronotype and so forth, but not figuring out when I'm going to do it. And so Allegra will expand on what to do instead of making that mistake.
Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes we tell ourselves these lies that we're not even aware of. Like, and one
Yeah.
of those lies is the "I'll get to it when I have time." And I'm like,
Mhm.
there's no reminder on your phone that pops up saying you have time. There's no por there's no
Right.
portion of
Yeah.
your planner that says
Right.
you have time.
Right. Exactly. Like
Right.
this section is like, you have time section. Here's
Right,
extra
like,
time.
where is this mystical land of when I have time?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have to make time. And this is where knowing your chronotype will be really helpful. And you literally just schedule your to-dos. So again, we have the sample, in our book and workbook, in our book and workshop. And so for instance, painting the cabinets, that is a shallow task. I knew it was going to take me a couple of hours. I did not want to do it Monday through Friday. Saturday, my husband tends to take our kiddo to hang out with his mom. So I tend to have the day to myself. And so I scheduled it for Saturday, 2 to 4 p.m. I don't want to be exhausted because I don't want paint on the floor, but I'm
Yeah.
also, it's not going to be the first thing I do in the morning. So I literally just put it in my planner, Saturday, 2 to 4. And, I draw an arrow from 2 to 4. So it's like that time's blocked out. So this process is called time blocking. Time blocking is something you can read about more at length online, but no one else talks about it in the framework of considering your deep and shallow tasks. And I feel like that's a really important nugget that we gave you there. Another thing to think about is sometimes there are these things that don't take a lot of time, but you have to get there. So for instance, one of my to-dos is picking up my contact lenses. My optometrist is a 20 to 30-minute drive, depending on traffic. I live in Los Angeles. If you get it, you get depending on traffic. and and it doesn't take me long to just run in and get it, but it's a drive. And so rather than wasting time and energy and just saying, oh, I need to go get my lenses, I'm going to go get it, I take a few minutes and I think, okay, well, my daughter takes classes about 6 minutes away from there. I'm going to pick up my lenses on a day when she's taking the class. And to top it all off, my optometrist is next to one of our favorite lunch places. So, I do this whole thing where I'm like, okay, I'm going to drop off the kid. I'm going to order us lunch. I'm going to pick up lunch, pick up my contact lenses, pick up my kid, come home. Family has our favorite lunch. Mom for the win, right? But I also saved
Yes.
myself time and driving time and
Mhm.
gas. Well, if you drive a gas car, so it just makes sense. It's just being more efficient with my time. Then there are things on
Mhm.
your to-do list that are deep tasks, and they might be deep tasks that require repeated effort, such as writing a book, writing a newsletter, working on that business plan, whatever, anything, painting, whatever you're working on that requires your focused attention and needs more than one day to be done. That sort of thing I will schedule in for multiple days, but a shorter period of time. So for instance, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 1 hour to work on Natasha and I's automations. For anyone listening who doesn't know what an automation is, when you sign up for a person's email list and you start receiving emails automatically, that is part of an automation. And automations, there's so many ways to mess them up.
It's very detailed.
Yes. Very detailed work, very complicated. If you change one thing, it doesn't just ripple through. You have to change it in multiple places. So it requires a lot of attention. So that's the sort of thing that I would schedule in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., right? I want to do it when I'm fresh. And I give myself the break so that your subconscious can kind of chew on whatever it was you did and think about any possible problems or things you want to change. And that's just kind of reoccurring until it's complete. And, blocking out that time is so important because this is important work, right? It's not urgent. No one but Natasha and I care if our automations are in place and done correctly, but it's important. So we have to schedule time for it.
Mhm.
So yeah, so schedule a time, put it into your planner. And we really recommend that people, when they do the brain dump of their to-do list, go through this process. Like, should I have written this down? No, I'm not going to write this down, but I'm going to think about, like walking the dog. I'm going to think about a better place to do this. And then the 2-minute things, just doing them right away. And then with whatever's left, think about, is this deep work? Is this shallow work? And when can I fit it into my schedule? And then actually write it into your schedule. That's how you make time for
Yes.
things.
Mhm. Yeah, you take your existing time and block it out. And I want to just say that, like, I initially, it's easy to time block, of course, appointments that you have, right? That's just making an appointment in your calendar, right? So it doesn't
Mhm.
even it doesn't feel like time blocking. But what I'd often do is resist going like, well, I have these to-do list items. They're here on my to-do list. Why would I need to then schedule it into my life? It feels kind of either A, redundant, or B, like anal, But what really winds up happening is that aside from, and I'm really, I'll do that for my week, but then sometimes if I have like a lot to do in one day, if I time block that day, it just winds up being more efficient. Even if like, okay, so let's say I time block something from 9 to 10, but whatever I was doing from 8 to 9 ran over and then I didn't get a chance to really do that. But at least it gives me a framework of like, okay, so I thought I needed this amount of time. I actually needed more. Now this thing that I didn't get to go to, where can I put that somewhere else instead of just skipping over it, right? Which is what I would
Right.
do if it was just on a to-do list. And next thing you know, like I mentioned earlier about moving things from to-do list to to-do list. Well, that was me for forever and ever. I would just put it on the next to-do
Mm.
list, And so by going ahead and time blocking, it shifts it into, like we like to say, when you do a brain dump, it takes it out of your head and puts it in space. And then when you do the time blocking, it puts it in time. So we're going to put it in time and space together so it exists and so that it actually happens, right? As opposed to just being theoretical. When we put it in our calendar, it stops being theoretical, and then hopefully we actually get around to doing it. But it helps me also just understand where I am in the process of getting those things done, and where maybe I'm going to have to move something to a different place in time. It's really just a lot better. Like right now we're in the summertime, right? And so my schedule's a lot more loosey goosey. And if I don't go ahead and just, I want to have some flex time with my kids and spontaneity, as well as see my clients, do the things that are set in time. Um, but if there's a lot of things on my to-do list that, like Electric said, don't have to be done today, don't have to be done, but they do eventually have to be done. And this morning I had time blocked some things out for myself to just get it done before the kids got up and we, have other summer things to do, and making sure that it happened. And lo and behold, it's done now and it's off my to-do list. And the summer is just, freed up a little bit more, that much more.
This is probably my favorite tip out of the three that you guys share because it's the most relatable for me. I think there was a huge chunk of my 20s where I did exactly that. Like I would have this massive to-do list every single day, and it was in a sauna, not organized, just like literally organized by day, and that was it. So I would just tick off the list. But what the problem was, I can output a lot in a day, like just naturally. I've always been that way. And so what I would do is put like 3 weeks of work on one day and then get a ton of it done, like nearly killing myself, right? Like I'm going from, now you're talking about like if I want time to relax with the kiddos, now I'll block whole days, I'll block whole evenings for creativity, space, thinking, and rest, right? Like I will
Yeah.
do that now. But I wouldn't have time for myself because I'd start at 6, I'd work till midnight, right? Like 7 days a week. I'm just getting it all done to, like, I don't know, prove to myself that I'm worthy or something. And I had no, I
Yeah.
guess, calibration with myself on, okay, where is this actually going to fit in your calendar so that you
Yeah.
can still sleep
Right.
and eat? And
Yes.
so, I mean,
Yes.
this one, I mean, it's so relatable and I think so applicable.
Yeah, and also too, it gives you permission to let go of things that maybe you wanted to do at one point, but no longer want to do. You know, I used to do I used to teach cooking classes, and I had invented a food product, and anyway, that's a whole big thing, but everyone would ask me, "Where's your cookbook?" And I thought to
Mm.
myself like, "Yeah, I guess I should write a cookbook. Hmm."
Mhm.
And it was on my goal
Yeah.
sheet forever. I never even wanted to make time for it. And I was like, "Why am I forcing myself to do something that I don't wanna do? Like, that doesn't make sense." And after a little bit of soul searching, I realized, "Oh, I don't want my legacy to be food." That's where the
Mm,
resistance is.
okay.
And once I realized that, I was like, "I have permission to not write a cookbook and to stop to talk about food because it's fun and I like it, but it's not what I wanna focus on professionally." So, if you're not giving something time, maybe it's because it's a goal that doesn't actually resonate with you, that got put on you by your family or society, or that an older version of you, a former version of you wanted at some point. Let go of it.
It's one of my
Mhm.
favorite things to take people through is what can we let go of? What can we say no to? What can we remove? Because again, it goes back to
Mhm.
brain space. It is taking up space in your brain. and eating away at your energy that you could be spent doing so many more cool things that apply to you now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So I want to take a look at now. Let's just say we are your client and we're walking in and we're struggling with efficiency and planning and getting all these things done. How would you walk us through something that you guys teach called the 3-2-1 method?
Number one, don't write down reoccurring things or 2-minute lists. So, right, do your brain dump and then look at that list and then reorg so that you are trying to train yourself not to write down things that take 2 minutes or less, just do them, or are reoccurring. Take a little time to think about how you can make that a part of your day, a habit, rather than something on your to-do list. And then, think about whether or not something is deep or shallow. And then look at your planner and figure out how long it's going to take and time block it out. So that's the 3-part framework that we want you to do every time you do this brain dump. And with enough time, it will become internalized. I actually no longer write down a to-do list. I make shopping lists and I make packing lists, but I don't make to-do lists because when something comes up, I will literally either do it, like order my daughter erasers, or I will think to myself, okay, that's going to take me a couple hours. Right now I'm focusing on this event we have going on. I can get to that in August on this day. And I write it down there. So eventually you'll get there. It will take practice. So that's why we recommend going through the 3-2-1 done process until you internalize it.
Right. And one of the
I
things
love
you
that.
just mentioned, Lindsay, is this idea of like, what could we let go of? That we're talking about just within the context of productivity and just getting better about getting your to-do list done, right? But I love what
Mhm.
you just mentioned, which is this step of like the pre-step to this is what can you let go of? What are your values so that you can really be in alignment
Yeah.
with those and maybe let go of some things that just won't make it on your to-do list anymore because it's just not in alignment with who you are or what your goals are. So that's like, a pre-step, but in the context of just really crushing your to-do list and having it be something that works better for you, these 3 steps that we just walked through are the way to do that. That's what we would walk our client through.
That's amazing. And if we want to go through it on our own, we also have the 3-2-1 done book that you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier.
Yeah.
So where can they find that?
So you can find that wherever you get books. You can go to books2read.com/321done. That's BOOKS, the number 2, READ.com/321done. And it's also, Natasha and I have been educators for decades. So we know some people like to read, some people like to listen, some people like to watch. It's also available as a workshop. It's a $7 workshop. You can get it on our website, bywdreams.com. And really, it's such an instant win. I mean, we love teaching this workshop because just people's eyes light up when they're
I
like,
mean,
"Oh my God,
it's so
that
fun. And we've
yeah,
taught this to, people in their golden years who are just still like, I still want to get these certain things done and I can't seem to, college students and everyone in between. These are all of these 3 solutions really can be implemented no matter where you are in your life. If you work in the home, out of the home, you have a family, don't have a family. It just really is something that can be applied across the board.
Absolutely. And we have covered so much today. And the two of you have shared so many great tips and tactics and resources and tools. And if we're listening to this and we're not sure where to start, what is the first tip or tactic that we should go do right away?
make your bed."
Make your bed. Make your bed
It
every
all
day. The
starts with
brains,
making your
it
bed.
all, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the truth though. It's wild how
Yes.
much research has been done on making your bed and how that just sets you up for having a successful day.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I love this part that Allegra, because I'd heard that before and I'd read about that before, but I love the component that Allegra had brought to mind, is that it also helps you get a better night's sleep because when you go
Yeah.
ahead and turn your bed down every single night. That signals to your body, okay, we're powering down. It's time to sleep. It's just one of those things like turn down the lights or close the shades, turning down your bed because you made it that morning. It's not just a big pile of mess, every night when you go ahead, turn it down, pull it down to reveal those nice, clean sheets that are just going to feel so great. You get excited about going to sleep. Yeah, it helps you with a better night's sleep as well as setting you up for just a better day, mindset wise, efficiency wise. You don't have to put it on your to-do list,
No,
y'all.
just do
You
it.
don't just make your bed. And literally, I mean, like, unless you
It
like,
literally takes 30 seconds.
it
I've
takes
taken
30
so many
seconds.
videos of myself doing it.
Yeah. If you're not like a pillow scaper, if you don't have 700 pillows, it takes 30 seconds. And I have done it in the morning where my husband's sleeping in. And I'm like, I'm just going to make my side of the bed. I don't care what his
Yep.
side looks like. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I do it
Yeah.
at a hotel room. I'm staying at my folks' house right now for a couple of weeks in the summer. I, do it while on vacation. Like it just makes it, just gives you that little bit of morning boost. And it is crazy how much research has been done about it. There's a lot of science backing that up. Make your bed.
Yeah, and that's our number one tip in our book, Rock Your Morning. So we have our beautiful bouquet of books. They're all workbooks, they're all short reads because again, we want to get to the nitty-gritty. We want to help you live a better life. We don't just want to talk about the problems. And
Yeah.
make your bed.
Make your bed, y'all.
That's
Make it. Mhm.
I was the kid for years who like refused to make my bed. And it's so funny because when I made that shift into adulthood, because I was like, oh, I'm not going to make my bed because I don't have to, and that's just what I'm told to do, and I'm just going to like jump into bed when at the end of the day, and I don't even have to care. And then when I started doing it, you guys, I was like, oh my God, I can't go back. Like I've not ever been able to go back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
And
a great takeaway.
well, and let's give you, let's think about it again in terms of numbers, like the brain, 2% of your body weight, 20% of your calories. Think about the percentage of your bedroom that your bed takes up. Like literally making your bed, even if the rest of your room is a mess, like a made bed will make your room look like
So much
60%
neater.
neater because it takes
At
up
least.
60%
Yeah.
of your bedroom probably.
Yeah. I'm trying. I've got teenage boys right now. And one of the things we have like a summer more, tracker because, if we didn't have some way to kind of manage that, they'd just be off and running. And the first thing is make your bed. I'm really trying to instill that with them. That's the first thing on their tracker is make your bed. And so far so good this summer. They're doing a good job.
That's awesome. Well, thank you to both of you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your tips and really teaching us some of those mistakes that we might have not realized that we're doing. And then also not just the mistakes, but like you said, the nitty-gritty, how to take action, what to do, how to fix it, how to turn it around. So we're so grateful you're here and thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for braving the inside of your mind with me. The better we understand ourselves, the more deeply we understand the world, and as our awareness grows, life just gets better and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share this with anyone else you think could benefit from listening. A quick reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, and the discussions here are not a substitute for professional advice. If you're dealing with a specific issue or need personalized guidance, please consult with a qualified professional. Your well-being is important, and this podcast is simply a platform for sharing insights and experiences. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time.